2 surgeries for that, and we paid for it. In the interim, we tried to enter the high-risk pool that these people keep talking about. In fact, I got a letter from Thornberry that said, apply for the high-risk pool. I applied in the high-risk pool, and the insurance in 2003 was $2,400 a month. And that was for one person, for him. There has got to be some kind of incentive for insurance companies to help in this fight. He has got to be able to sit down with the insurance companies and say, okay, if we make some kind of a deal for people that have pre-existing conditions, you can continue to sell insurance through the exchanges. But these things are causing the cost of insurance to skyrocket. And it's not my fault, and it's not anyone's fault except these people who refuse to, as she said, not worry about anything that affects regular working class people. My husband's a farmer. We live on a farm. There is no insurance company that wants to cover farmers. And until we got Medicare, we had nothing. And so we paid for our every medical bill that he had, which amounted to about $250,000. And took all the savings that we had in 7 years to pay off in payments. Because the insurance company just said, you have a pre-existing condition. I am grateful to live in Amarillo because every doctor I contacted made a deal with me. He sat down with me and said, you can pay this out, this $3,000 bill, we'll mark it down to so-and-so. There's got to be some way that they can work with doctors, they can work with insurance companies. The letters I got back from you, Mr. Thornberry, were form letters to a woman who was suffering. And, you know, I don't understand it. I had a degree in political science, and this is something that's such a deep issue in this country that they need to call in all of us and have us sit down and figure out some way to provide health insurance to everyone, even if it's a single payer.
I'm Eric, and part of what I want to say is a statement. Healthcare is a right. It's not a privilege. That's the very reason that every developed country in the world has healthcare for its citizens. It's why we ought to have healthcare for our citizens.
I was once the victim of an unnecessary back surgery when nobody bothered to x-ray my hip. And the back surgeon that I was seeing had these big signs, this was years ago, in his office about my doctor and me. My doctor and me make our choices. I want to know, what is this stuff about choices? Is this something rich people get to do? One, how in the world do you possibly choose a doctor? They can't advertise. What do? You talk to your friends? That's what I did and ended up with an unnecessary surgery. Why are we emphasizing choice? It's just crazy. The only people that ever talk about it are the people that don't want me to have insurance.
We talk some more about this, but you know, that's why I wanted to truth with these stupid buzzword statements that they give, because it's always the same. It's like, well, I'm for choice. You don't get that under what we have now. I guess choice of what insurance company to screw you. I don't know what that is. But they use the same buzzwords over and over again. And I'm interested, just like hearing from you, that's great. It's awful. It's awful. But what is it with all of this? Oh, people have to choose. That's all. We're in favor of individual freedom, which you don't get under Obama. Sure, right. Okay, anyway. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Betty Ramsey, and Angela, I wasn't going to say anything, but you triggered something, so I have to tell my story. I have been fighting with insurance companies since I was in my 20s. When I went to work for a public institution in Amarillo, the women could not insure their families. The men could, but the women could not. They were not allowed to insure their men. My husband was a cowboy. He got hurt on the ranch. He got bucked off of a horse and paralyzed from his armpits down. The ranch didn't carry much insurance. I think it was $2,500 or something. So there was no insurance. And so we had to get involved. We didn't want to, but we had to get involved with a lawsuit, which paid at that time for what, several years later, after a lot of humiliation and horrible things, paid for the hospital bills. So, I worked and continue to work with him with no insurance, with many problems from being a paraplegic. And finally, I went to work for the school system. And they had some kind of insurance where they just included families without, they didn't have to show any kind of medical thing. So I had insurance for him. But the insurance, every time something would come up, it was always related to his pre-existing condition. That's what the insurance company would say. Luckily, he had lawyer friends that would intervene for him. So when he had to have a gallbladder surgery, they said, that's not a pre-existing condition of somebody that's a paraplegic. And so I'm just saying that if all of these people could hear these stories, and if they were on the same insurance that we all have to have, and they were on the same retirement plans that we all have to have, maybe they would fix some of the problems.
Yes. Betty, it's great to see you again. Thank you for being here. Thank you a
I
lot.
remember Buck well.
Yeah.
Miss him greatly.
Yeah. Yeah, Betty, you've done as much or more than anybody I know of in this town for decades to hold up the progressive end, and it's really good to see you down here. Thank you. I didn't recognize you with the man hat. All right, let's keep talking about healthcare.
I have a lot that I would like to say, and I don't want to take up too much time, but as human beings, we seem to want to categorize everything, and I'm glad that we have these topics to stimulate conversation. But to me, they're all interrelated. I don't think we can separate anyone And so my concern about this issue with healthcare has to do with pretty much every other thing on that list, and especially when it comes to the environment. Right now we have an epidemic of cancer, and especially in this region, the rates are extremely high, but nationwide. And we're poisoning our land, we're poisoning our water, we're poisoning our air supply, we're poisoning our food supply, and we're all getting sick. And now we don't have adequate health care, or you're proposing that we don't have adequate health care for all of that. So I would just like to say, overall, in general, having lived a fairly healthy lifestyle and having come down with this cancer bug and struggling to fight that without ever having to face medical conditions and insurance and all of those things in the past, I now have a pre-existing condition moving forward. And I would just like to ask, within this issue of healthcare and with all of the other issues that are talked about tonight and all of the other issues that are not talked about tonight, that you would consider any issue before you, how does it affect people? How does it affect human beings? How does it affect the planet? How does it support, sustain life? Rather than how does it profit individuals and special interests? Thank you.
So I'm going to read something that somebody had submitted. By the way, if anybody does not want to come up and talk in the microphone, you can give us one of these cards and we'll be happy to read your questions or your concerns for you. Of course, it's not going to be as powerful as if you did it. So this is a pretty pointed question. By the way, I don't get any sense that people don't want to come up and talk, but just